What's up, Nick?
What's going on? Happy to be back in the studio.
Yes, sir. Another episode of the Barnhill Brothers Combat Sports Show or MMA show, whatever. We got to figure out how to shorten the name but still make it effective. The Barnhill Brothers show.
Yeah, the Barnhill Brothers, yeah.
But yeah, so what a great weekend of fights. It's good to be back in the studio.
Stacked card.
Yas Island, Fight Island. It's the real deal.
Yeah, man.
They're hammering out some kinks, but all in all, for the first show, on Fight Island, and the fact that it was such a major pay-per-view and all the challenges there, I think all things considered, they did an excellent job.
Yeah, I'd say the biggest hiccups that they ran into weren't anything that had to do with COVID. I think it was some of the controversial refereeing and judging. But other than that, I mean, you get those on regular cards when there's no pandemic going on. So
Exactly.
You know,
And I think when it comes to the refereeing and judging, there needs to really just be some of the right minds need to come together and get around solving this problem, because it's really becoming a big problem, and it's becoming a stain on what would otherwise be such an amazing fight and amazing card.
Right.
So if that being said, we can jump off with the Max Holloway Volkanovski fight.
Yeah, which if you go online, and pretty much everybody across the board from what I've seen said it was a very close fight, but almost everybody gave the fight to Holloway. And, Volkanovski, he fought a great fight, clearly won the fourth and the fifth round. But, I mean, Max clearly won the first and second. And if I'm just going off numbers and the way perception of how the fight looked, he won the third round too. So, there's people that say, well, the championship rounds matter more. And I disagree with that. I think that all rounds, if there's 5 rounds, they each matter equally. And I don't know. I just think it was a bit of a robbery.
I do too. I had Max winning that fight 48-47, 3 rounds to 2. I think most people did. Most experts did. So it really comes down to what are the judges looking for here? Because when you have the two of the 3 judges scoring that for Volkanovski 3 rounds to 2, I think the entire MMA community as a whole could benefit, and fans and everyone could benefit from these people coming out and giving some clarity.
Right.
We're not going to beat you up and drag you, although that does happen, with really horrible decisions. But this is not so much that type of exercise. This is just more of an exercise of, hey, you scored that fight 3 rounds to 2 for Volkanovski. Educate us here. Tell us what you saw that made you score it that way. Maybe there's a perfectly reasonable explanation, but I just don't see it. And
maybe we should hear from the judges at the post-fight press conference. Just give us your thoughts on the fight. If when we sat there, we all watched the fights together like we do all the time. When it went to the judges, when the final bell rang, we all said, okay, well, we think Max probably won this fight, and they're going to probably do a trilogy. And then they give the fight to Volkanovski. I'm just a little bit taken back, because we all, we watch a lot of fights, and when we're all on the same page, you kind of know that it's like a dominant fight for somebody. And I think it's just a clear 3 rounds to 2 win for him. And we went to the internet right after, and it was outrage with Max losing.
Right. And, and we watched it together, and we had some family and friends over, and there wasn't if one single person in the group of folks that were watching it with us had offered some explanation or had opinion that Volkanovski had won and, made a well thought out case, maybe I could, understand it, but I just I don't see it.
I may have to watch it again. It would be like if one of the judges gave, the fight to Masvidal after that, How close do these rounds have to be for you to just toss them away to somebody? Like, did Masvidal win the first round in his fight? I seem to think he did, because even though he got taken down, more damage was done and less control was had on the ground. So I don't know. It's a messy situation, but it's got to be fixed.
Yeah, I think we need some transparency. We need some proper training.
Yeah,
and quite frankly, I think we need some people in the judges' seats that have either been in the octagon or train regularly, because if it is so funny, we have this conversation with our dad all the time, who sees somebody on top of somebody else and says, "Oh, this guy's just stalling. What the heck is this? This is not fighting. This is." But and I understand that from a casual fan's perspective that some of the grappling exchanges might not be very exciting to watch.
Right.
But there's certain things that people are doing in certain positions that are totally dominant, that they're imposing their will. They're controlling the cage. They're pushing you back and forcing you to fight on your back. But whatever the case may be, they are, by any expert's opinion, would be winning that fight. Right. And I think that, that was the situation here with Max and Volkanovski, is that it was a very clear, if we're doing a 10-round must system, which I guess there's debate as to whether that should even be the way we judge things, but it is the way we judge things
and
currently.
3 judges currently. So I think more judges and a different scoring system is the way to go. I also think, Uncle Chael, the real MVP.
We can't have an episode pass by without mentioning Uncle Chael.
He said something, and I totally agree with him. He said, we know for sure that we got the right 2 guys in there for the 145 strap.
Right.
And, he also said, and largely this is the case, you're not going to see Max get another title shot. And really there's no route for him back to the title while Volkanovski's there, because if you lose 2, generally you don't get a third fight. I think they could make an exception for this one. But also that 45 division is kind of a revolving door when you've got the zombie, T-City Ortega, Zabit, Yair Rodriguez, Calvin Kattar, all these guys waiting in the wing. I have a feeling it's going to be, switching
a new
hands
face next time.
Yeah.
Even though Dana did seem very frustrated at the decision, and he even asked the press asked the media during the press conference, did any of you guys score for Volkanovski? And I think the response, all of them said no. No, I think it was all of them. I don't think anybody scored it for Volkanovski.
Wow.
And it was the other night when we were watching Juliana fight. Shout out to our friend Juliana Lima. She fights Invicta, had a war with Joanna Jacek. She happens to be our Muay Thai coach. One thing I liked about that card as we were watching, because the first time I had really sat down and watched a full Invicta card, was the transparency in between rounds.
Yeah, every round
you saw what the score was in between rounds, and one that gives a corner clear instructions and marching orders for their fighter.
Right.
It lets the fighter know where they are. Would Max have won the 5th round if he knew that 2 of the 3 judges gave the 3rd to Volkanovski? Would he have done something different?
Right.
Now, I understand you should go out there and you should try to win every round, but there is a certain strategy and ways that you plan and do a fight. You only have so much energy that you can spread across 25 minutes.
Right.
And even somebody in as great a shape as Max still has limits to how much his output is.
For sure.
So what would he have done differently had he known that he was down going into the 5th? I kind of like that approach. I don't see a reason why the judges can't be transparent in between rounds. It doesn't need to be this big secret.
In my opinion, it would take a bit of the suspense out of the final decision, but I think we could just redirect that built-up suspense right at the end into five pieces of anticipated suspense every round. It like kind of do it almost like a game show, like let the octagon lights go red or blue for who won that round, and people would either be outraged or they'd agree with it.
But
you'd kind of, and then it also would nine times out of 10 the coaches in the corners are giving great instructions, but if you tell your fighter, hey, I think you won that round, and they didn't, then they might come out with the wrong game plan for the following rounds.
And they may say, you're up 4 rounds to none. Go out there. I mean, don't run around the cage, but go out there and stay behind your jab. Don't do anything crazy. Don't, try to go for bust or go for broke. It would totally change the instructions. And I like it. I think, and a lot of the times the judges, they render their decision. Oh, look, we got a
cameo,
guest here, guys. This is Nick's dog, Tosh.
He was napping, so we didn't want to kick him out.
Tosh
he's
came
here.
all the way from Jamaica. He's been with us for years.
Yeah, and he loved the fights in Yas Island.
He's a big fight fan. But so the if I think that the judges render their decisions, they give it to Buffer. Buffer's in the ring. All the attention is off the judges at that point. It's on the 2 fighters and Buffer and Dana White if he's got a belt in his hand to strap it around somebody's waist. But I think that if the judges were a little bit in the hot seat, that they had to put down each round who they thought had won,
right,
and then get some feedback from the audience, that would keep them a little more honest, and maybe they would watch the fights a little bit more intensely.
Yeah. Well, one that didn't really need to go to the judges, even though it did, Masvidal versus Usman. I mean, that was a great dominant performance by Usman, and obviously his style isn't one that's going to gain him mass amounts of fans every time he steps in the ring like a Conor McGregor or a George Masvidal. But, you know, George Masvidal, in my opinion, said it best. He said, you know, Usman fought a perfect fight for somebody against like me. You know, who wants to? Usman doesn't want to just come stand and bang with me, so he has to bring out other tools and other weapons, and that's exactly what he did.
Yeah, you know, and I wish that one could have gotten run back, or will at some point be run back, and Masvidal is given the proper time to train. And I understand they said, oh, well, he was training for that fight, but still he had to cut 22 pounds in a very short amount of time.
And in fight camp, you get in a totally different zone. When you have 8 weeks, you're in a totally different zone. And he fights year-round, trains year-round. But there's something different when you're signed and know you're fighting.
Yeah, the pressure's on at that point. The mindset changes. Here's my thoughts on it, and you know I've said this a bunch of times. I think that there's an argument to be made that Kamaru Usman is the most complete MMA fighter that is out there right now.
Yeah.
That said, I don't want to take anything away from him. However, I didn't enjoy the fight. I didn't think it was that great of a
entertainment.
It didn't have that entertainment value. Yes, he did get him against the cage. Yes, he did keep him against the cage. When Masvidal was having some success with the striking, he did the smart thing and took him down.
Right.
But in a lot of those exchanges, Masvidal was being even more active from the guard with the elbows and the punches and all that than Usman. You kind of have to look at it this way, because there's a lot of talk these days about all of these fighters that want to be paid more, that want to make more money, that want more sponsorships. They want. But what are you willing to give in return for that?
Right.
And Conor McGregor, it was the perfect example of that. He came in, he had an exciting style. He was going to bang with you. Mm-hmm. He was going to try to knock you out. He was going to entertain you from the time the fight was signed all the way up until the post-fight press conference. Right. And for someone like Usman to come out there and largely play it extremely safe against a fighter who he probably could have beaten by, in a more entertaining fashion, he chose not to. And from the perspective of doing what you have to do to retain your belt, staying the champion, beating a dangerous last-minute replacement, and moving on to probably Gilbert Burns next, I understand it. But don't expect to gain a bunch of casual fans with a performance like that.
Right. I mean, they said this was the biggest pay-per-view since Khabib Conor back in 2018 with around 1.3 million pay-per-view buys. And, people, if you go to the internet, you'll see that some people weren't happy with that. And that's just because casuals, they want to see some striking and stuff like that. And, I think all fighters should get paid a little bit more, but due to how they're paid right now, and obviously that this shouldn't change because of how COVID happened. They're just lucky they have a job, because a lot of sports aren't playing right now. But people like Usman and things like that, they're quick to blame Dana White and say, you don't pay me enough. And most fighters, they say, you don't pay me enough. I want to be paid like Conor. And Conor he gets paid what he's worth. So if you want to get paid more, it's not Dana White who you have to appeal to. Obviously, he's your boss, so you have to give him what he wants to see. But he is run and operated by the fans, and he can only pay you what his fans are willing to bring in.
Worth. Yeah. And we all know, quite frankly, that if the main event of 251 was Gilbert Burns, Kamaru Usman, it would not have done the same pay-per-view numbers.
Not close.
It did the pay-per-view numbers because Masvidal was on the ticket.
Right.
And people like Masvidal get paid what they get paid because they entertain, they bring fans to the table, and quite frankly, people don't care that Masvidal's loss, his loss is
14
in the double
fights,
digits, 14 in the teens. That's not what they care about. What they care about is that it's like Cowboy Cerrone. That this person shows up. They're down to fight, and no matter who you put across from them, they're going to try their best to make it exciting. And so I don't want to use this time to just slam Kamaru Usman because he's one of the best fighters in the world. Right. But at the same time, if you expect to really launch into superstardom, you have to consider making your fights a little bit more exciting.
Right. And superstardom and also getting paid more. I think he'll get paid a lot of money if he continues to fight like this because he's going to get pay-per-view numbers and eventually, those will end up adding up. But if you want these single night big pay-per-view or big paydays, then you've got to cater to what the people want to see. You've got to
be a fan favorite. And it's two different discussions. The first discussion is pure skill as a mixed martial artist, which nobody can take that away from Usman. Right. The second part of the discussion is being the superstar that makes the big bucks. That requires a different skill set. And that requires taking some chances. That requires doing some things that could put you in a vulnerable position. Right. Which is what Conor did his whole career.
Masvidal's stock went up after losing this weekend. And he's going to get paid very well. He's going to get a great fight next. He's going to get a main event next, I'm sure. Yep. If not a co-main.
I think he's main event here on out.
Yeah. And I think he deserves a rematch. And I think a 10 to 12 week fight camp for a guy like Masvidal might be the best opponent for Usman. He kind of saw what he has to deal with. He felt him. And I think if he was able to get a full fight camp in, and knowing what he knows now,
with great wrestlers like Bo Nickel, who was there with him, and
I think I'm not going to say he would beat Usman, but he has maybe the best chance of anybody on the roster right now. So,
and I think largely, he was obviously taken down multiple times, but he defended more takedowns.
Yeah, look at the times he stuffed those takedowns because that shows he's really, really a complete martial
artist. And that's
not
an easy thing. I think people that largely went unnoticed with people.
Yeah,
it's like how many times that you can defend a takedown from a dominant wrestler who that's a major part of his game, like Usman's. That's no small feat.
Yeah, Masvidal's an absolute monster.
So shout out to Masvidal for taking the fight.
Shout out to Usman for fighting a perfect fight against a guy. Usman in the post-fight press conference, people were going, "Oh, people thought it was boring online, and people are trashing you." He goes, "All those people that are trashing me, they should step in and sign to fight Jorge Masvidal in a 5-round fight because." He's trying to win fights and retain his title, and I don't blame him. I wish that for his sake, so he could make more money, he had more of an entertaining style. But if it's working, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Yep. So that's how I look at it. And somebody who's got almost a perfect record is the young Petr Yan.
Yeah, and you don't have to worry about his fights being exciting.
Oh my God, this guy blasted on the scene, 2 years in the UFC, and he's already got the strap.
He's the real deal. I was watching some of his training footage from Tiger Muay Thai, out. And speaking of which, I think that's just becoming one of the premier camps in MMA right now. It's we lived in Jamaica for a couple of years, so we know how important it is to be in a tropical setting where you have all these great fruits and vegetables and the sun shining and it's hot and you can work up a sweat. Yeah, I really like if I were preparing for a fight and had the means to go to a camp, it would probably be Tiger Muay Thai. That would be a lot of fun.
But even if you just spend a few months down there in between fights.
My God, what strikers they have at that. Like Valentina the Bullets out there, Petr Yan. And they've done a really good job bringing in good strength and conditioning and grappling and wrestling and jiu-jitsu coaches. And they're making it a full, complete camp. But Petr Yan is the real deal. People largely kind of, and we said this last week as well, discounted Aldo after he got knocked out by McGregor, but he was still a decade-long dominant UFC champ, one of the best ever, Hall of Famer, and he got worked by Petr Yan. And Aldo did good. He had his moments, and he was doing well in certain rounds. But Petr Yan, when he turned that up in the end there, towards the championship rounds, he really started to pull away from one of the best fighters of all time.
And I think that fight should have been stopped a little earlier than it was. That ref let Jose take too many punches.
What was he doing?
And usually when somebody shells up and they aren't doing anything, hard to do something when somebody's all over you like Yan was and even had his back and flattened out and is just punching you on the side of the head countless times. you just stopped the fight. And Jose was clearly looking for a way out.
Yeah.
There was no way physically, so he needed to rely on the ref, and the ref was just not doing his job as far, and I get it. Some refs think that people like Aldo, they want to give him the benefit of the doubt. It might be Aldo's last time getting a title shot, so they want to give him every chance they can, but you got to know when enough's enough.
So far.
You got to know when enough's enough.
And one, you have two basically layers of protection. One is the ref to get you out of there.
Right.
If the ref's not doing his job, which he clearly was not doing, because everybody saw that and said, my God, somebody needs to stop this fight. Then you have the second layer of protection, which is your corner.
Mm-hmm.
And your corners have to be the adults in the room. They have to say, hey, look, I know you want to fight. I know you're a warrior. I know you're tough, but as someone who cares for you, who trains you, who a lot of the time it's a very almost like parental type of relationship with your trainers.
Sure.
You have to be the adult in the room and say enough is enough.
Yeah.
This is over. Let's preserve your career. Let's preserve your life after your career.
Right.
So I think the ref needs to really look at that fight and feel pretty ashamed of himself that he didn't stop it sooner.
And be more cautious next time he gets in the ring and judges two people fighting. It's just brutal.
With boxing, you have a pro boxing fight under your belt as well. 1-0, 1 KO, by the way.
There we go. Yeah, record.
Perfect record, just like Floyd.
Yeah, I'm only 49 fights away from being the greatest of all time.
And you're the GOAT. So, boxing had, and our original boxing coach Joe Walters was very heavily criticized for pulling his son Nicholas out against Vasily Lomachenko, but he said the same thing that, Chael says Clayton Hires tells him all the time is, I stopped the fight when I realized that my fighter no longer has a chance of winning. Mm-hmm. There's no reason to be in there and taking damage and taking years off your life. And, when the guy literally has you flattened out on your back, punching you in the face, you call the fight there. You've taken enough damage. You're a great champion. You live to fight another day.
Right.
And I wish that his corner and the referee would have stopped that fight a lot sooner than they did.
I wish MMA corners in general kind of adopted that. Like we adopted the rule set, the 10-9 must system, and we've adopted a lot from boxing over the years. And that's one thing that just seems to not come over with is the corners stopping the fights. I'm all for it. As soon as I don't like seeing people take damage.
Right.
And I just think that some of these corners need to take some responsibility and help their fighters out, live to fight another day.
Agreed.
But Peter Yan, as far as the 135 goes, he's a bit of a juggernaut. He's scary.
He's a problem.
And DC said something, and in hindsight, now I completely agree with what he's saying. He said, everybody was wondering why Jose got the fight and why he lost his one shot at 135 against Marlon Weiss, even though people thought he won. On paper, he lost. And DC said, I think it's the right call to give him Peter Yan Jose Aldo because Jose Aldo, of all the names available, was the biggest name. And if Peter Yan can get past him, then more eyes and more people are going to know about Peter Yan, and that's going to be better for the division and better for the sport and better for Peter if he can get past the biggest name possible, who is no walk in the park for anybody.
Yeah. You beat arguably the argument is only between Aldo and Holloway.
Yeah.
You beat arguably the best fighter of all time at a weight category above your weight.
Insane.
I don't miss that. You know what I mean? That's major.
Yeah, you can't neglect to think about that.
And boy, oh boy, Aljamain Sterling is chomping at the bit to get a piece of him. I cannot wait. Yeah. I think that's the reasonable fight to make next.
For sure.
I cannot wait for that fight.
For sure. I see that one happening, and Aljo's such a stud. I think he's going to try to implement some of that super high level jiu-jitsu. We're gonna have to see if he can stand with Peter Yan because his striking is so high level, and there were times when Jose would win some exchanges, but you realize as he's winning those exchanges, it almost felt like Peter Yan was letting him get by with some of those to tire him out. And then if he knew Jose landed two good combinations on him, he'd make sure to score three back. And he's a very smart fighter. And I think that is the fight to make for 135. I think we
could be seeing a dominant champion in Peter Yan. If he gets past, I think Aljo is one of the toughest tests for him right out of the gate. I think if he gets past Aljo, we might see him as the champion for quite some time.
Yeah. I mean, there's a ton of good fights. Cody Garbrandt.
Yeah.
TJ Dillashaw when he comes back. I would love to see
that would be
TJ
exciting.
versus Peter Yan.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that. That would be very exciting.
But there's a ton of good ones for him, and I think he should be proud. And Jose Aldo obviously showed us that he's still very much so in his prime. Can you believe the guy's only 33 years old?
That's the crazy thing about it. When you see, it's like I was saying, when you see somebody like Holloway or Aldo or John Jones, any of these people that become, well, John hasn't. He's lost his belt, but for multiple different reasons. But when you see somebody come in and be a dominant champion from their early or their mid to late 20s, and then they lose it, you automatically just kind of correlate them with being an over the hill fighter in your head. And then when you look at their age, you're like, hold on, this guy hasn't even had his 30th birthday yet, and we're talking about him being washed up. What
blown away. Yeah, they're entering their prime.
Seriously.
It's crazy. We had a ton of fights. Some of the prelim and undercard fights were great. We'll touch real quickly on the Jiri guy.
I'm not even going to attempt his last
name.
He
fought no time. He fought no time. Volkan Oezdemir, and Volkan is a stud, one of the best in that division. But this new guy, I think he's somebody to watch.
We got some excitement at 205.
You know who I'd like to see? I'd like to see Johnny Walker and Jiri. I think that would be a fun fight. Get those two in. They're both entertaining. They're both cool-looking guys. They're characters.
He's got superstar written all over him if he can continue to rise. I mean, knocking out somebody like Oezdemir, that is no small feat. I mean,
starching.
This is a guy that we were talking about being a champ. Not long ago.
Yeah.
So
I think he's on everybody's radar in that division. We'll go all the way down about 100 pounds lighter. We got those females that fought. We had the rematch, Rose Namajunas and Jessica Andrade. What did you think about that?
I thought Rose did what she had to do to win the fight.
Yeah.
I think her striking looked crisp. Mm-hmm. She was able to disrupt Andrade's timing. Andrade did land some good shots.
Right.
But I think they got that one right. I think Rose won the fight.
Yeah,
she did a good
I do
job.
too. I think going into the fight, I would have said if this is a 5-round fight, I'm definitely going to give it to Rose. And now, in hindsight, when I look back, I'm realizing that if it would have been a 5-round fight, I think Andrade might have been able to
pull away a little bit. She
Andrade might have been able to, just naturally when you get these powerful cannonball type of people like Jessica Andrade, they're good for the first 3 rounds and then they start to taper down a bit. But Rose did so well and used so much energy in the beginning, and then Jessica Andrade kind of turned it up. If it was a 5-round fight, I think I would have given it to Andrade if we could have seen more. But all in all, a great fight. And then one you have to feel a little bit bad for is PVZ,
Paige VanZant.
Everybody's favorite. She's just such a great sport. She's just such a good person to have in the sport. This was her last fight on her contract. I felt a little bad that she got starched, and they kind of fed her.
Did say she should test free agency. So I don't know if that's a foreshadowing of them maybe not offering her another contract or them not being able to come to terms on what she thinks she's worth as a personality versus what they think she's worth maybe as a fighter. I guess we'll see. But, I felt bad for her.
She deserves a lot of love.
But, Amanda Ribas is a
stud.
Great personality. I mean, she was fun.
Yeah.
I didn't know much about her before, but she's a lot of, she's got a great personality. I think she might do some things in the division as well.
Yeah. Hopefully Paige, the next chapter is great for her. They kind of fed her to the wolves. Ribas is an absolute stud.
Yeah, she was one of the biggest, if not the biggest underdog on the
biggest
card.
Underdog. And she's just got she's got a bright future. I'm sure whatever she does, she'll be very good at, just like fighting, dancing, all the other things, entertaining. She should hold her head high.
Yeah.
Don't go out on this loss and think that you're washed up or anything. You did great, Paige.
Agreed. Guys, we tried to cap this at 30 minutes just to give you guys a hot take on what we thought.
Yep.
So we're approaching the end here of this episode of the Barnhill Brothers. Thank you so much. Please like, comment, subscribe, and now check us out on Apple, iTunes, podcast app.
We're officially on the podcast app. Go leave a review, 5-star, please, just like your Uber driver. And we'll be sure to give you 5 stars back as well. Like, comment, subscribe on the YouTube channel. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time.
See you next week.